So we have Eric Bello. Eric is a lifelong Oxnard native and a key figure in the local music scene. He formed the indie pop band Maria in 2002 and started Yay Records in 2006. After earning a BA in Music Industry Studies from CSUN, he stepped away from music only to return in 2023 with the Crystal Tears and a relaunch of Yay Records. And since then, he has promoted shows across the 805 and reunited Maria in late 2023. Yay's latest roster includes Boy Girl, Nick Hessler, and more, with their most recent show in December 2024. So let's give it up for Eric. And I have to say, as someone who used to frequent the Echoplex, Sea Lions and Catwalk are like right up my alley. So I'm very familiar with your genre. And then we also have John Crerar. John is a Ventura-based punk rock vet with Oxnard roots. Active since '94, he has played in over 10 bands, including The Missing 23rd, Stalag 13, and Headcut, and toured in 15 countries. His band, The Missing 23rd, was the first Oxnard Ventura punk band to play in Europe and Japan. Beyond music, John has worked in every aspect of concert production and spent over 25 years at Salzer's Records, eventually becoming GM. He now drums for Headcut, who recently performed at the 2025 Punk Rock Bowling Festival in Las Vegas. So let's give it up for John. We also have Jose Cruz Cano, who's an Oxnard native, musician, producer, and studio owner. He is best known as the co-founder and longtime drummer for Las Cafeteras, blending traditional and contemporary Latin sounds. With 15 years of professional music experience, he also serves on the Cultural Arts Commission for Oxnard and is an honorary board member at OPEC. Beyond music, he holds a degree in mechanical engineering and brings a deep commitment to community and culture. And last but not least, we have Gregory Ruiz Jr., who's born and raised in Oxnard. He's a media consultant with Point Broadcasting, working with 21 radio stations, including Old School 104.7 and Live 105.5. A lifelong music lover and vinyl collector, Gregory once owned a record store in the 90s and continues to sell records at events around Southern California. He's a passionate supporter of local music, regularly promoting and attending shows with deep roots in both the radio and retail sides of the music world. Okay, so now that we've met you all, I have some questions for you. So we'll just kind of start these and go round robin. What does Oxnard mean to you musically? Let's start with Eric.
It means...
Let's actually...
Oh, yeah,
can
that's
you
right.
use that? Only because it's being live streamed and I want to make sure
That's
everyone
right.
can hear you.
Shout out Oxnard 805, Cola Boy. It means like the struggle, honestly. We come from diverse roots starting. I mean, obviously Nardcore put us on the map, but you know, there's indie music that's kind of sprouted through. There's banda, there's norteño, there's cumbia, there's hip hop. It's just diversity, and it's speaking about struggles that, you know, colored people, you know, underrepresented people go through. So to me, that's what Oxnard is.
Awesome. And how about you, John?
Oxnard music, or what does Oxnard, the city, mean?
How does Oxnard influence you musically, and what does it mean to you personally?
Personally, just it feels like home. You know, I've been here since '88, so how it influenced me, I mean, looking up to, I don't have older brothers. I don't have any brothers, but the older Nardcore guys are kind of like older brothers to me. And so they kind of showed me the way of what music to listen to, what stuff to check out, how to be cool and not be a dick. Because there was a lot of dicks back in the day. So it's really, Oxnard just is like home. It's like family.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
That's awesome. If you guys haven't been to Silver Strand Beach area, there's a sandwich shop called the Strandwich, and if you go inside, it's a lot of cool memorabilia from old school like Nardcore days. So they have like zines in there and photos of like Annihilation Time, I think is the band. So definitely recommend stopping by there if Nardcore culture resonates with you. Okay, how about you, Jose?
Well, I'm from Oxnard, so I grew up here, and I moved away for college when I was 21. Came back 15 years later. So in some strange way, I'm fairly new to the Oxnard music scene, even though I grew up here. I wasn't exposed to much of the music when I was growing up. I feel like now, I don't know if it's different now or if I'm just seeing a lot more of it, but it's beautiful. I mean, Oxnard's my home. My heart is here. It's a really hardworking community. This is a community that's also like historically been looked down upon by a lot of our neighboring cities. That Oxnard's ghetto, it's dangerous, and sometimes it is. That is not totally untrue, but we're so much more than that. And so, for me, I think coming in from like the background that I have and plugging in here has been just like a really great like honor, duty to be able to kind of plug in and help kind of like bring us all up together. So my heart's in this community, and that's why I do so much of the work that I do here.
Amazing. Thanks. And Gregory?
Well, hello. As I'm listening to the other speakers here, I'm trying to think, what does Oxnard mean to me? And as far as the music scene, and it just hit me, my memories, my childhood. That's what I remember hearing a particular song walking down 3rd Street Bridge or walking down here, A Street, going through all the events here, Boys Club. I used to go to the Boys Club here on 7th Street. So all my memories of growing up, a lot of it has to do with the music. I'm passionate in music. I don't play any instruments, but I love music. I love hearing live music. So Oxnard and music goes together for me.
Amazing. Okay, now let's go back the other way. So Gregory, you'll start on this one. Each of you has been involved in very different corners of the music world, from punk and indie pop to traditional and community-based music. What do you think makes Oxnard's music scene unique compared to other cities in Southern California?
Well, for me, seeing young artists coming up when they started, I had a music store, actual record store back in the 90s, and a lot of the rappers that are now, that have made it and have been somewhat successful. It's always that competition with, not necessarily competition, but we're always considered the young or part of LA, but we're not LA. So they're always trying to be like, in a sense, be like LA. But we have our own identity here. We have our own culture. We have everything that LA has, just in a smaller scale. But it's always looking up and trying to be like LA. And that's kind of how they develop themselves, is by seeing that experience, seeing that element, and then they just come out on their own.
One thing, I lived in LA for 15 years, and I got to really kind of dive into the music scene there. There's a lot of industry around. Everybody knows somebody who has a studio. Everybody's in 2-3 bands. So it's really easy to plug in, or at least stay connected with people. Here, there's a lot less of that. But what I do see is that there's a lot of like ganas, like people who really, like people who love music, young people who love music, who really want to do more with it, and looking for kind of like answers on how to do this. I feel that it's kind of like it's like this community has like a very working class identity, because a lot of us come from families. A lot of us are like first generation from immigrant families. And I think that work ethic of just like trying to figure it out, trying to find it, like, how do we do this? We'll just do it in our living room, and like we'll still put on shows. We put on shows in parking lots because there's no stages, like we'll scrounge together a sound system because there's no like professional PA. And so I think that resilience to try to make it happen, and despite all of those setbacks, still there's groups that are kind of rising up that are doing really cool stuff and coming, like moving out and being able to play outside is sort of like a testament to like the work ethic and the identity of the people here.
Awesome. John?
For me, like the scene now is a lot more diverse. At least me coming from the punk world, it was very kind of separated. Mm-hmm. Like if you came to a show at the OPAC, before it was the OPAC, it was a community center, you had long hair, there might have been problems. It was a different time back then, and like now it's people are way more accepting of other things, and so you go to a show. I mean, Cola Boy's not here anymore, but he'd play with hardcore bands, and it was totally fine and totally cool, which I really, really like. And the whole scene is very diverse. Like, there's so many different things going on, hip hop, punk rock, alternative, whatever. And like now it's a lot more kind of unified in a way. It's not as separated, which I think is really cool.
Awesome. I just learned that there's actually like a Nardcore sign you can do with your hands, and I didn't know, but that's the Nardcore sign. It's just an O and an X for Oxnard.
Yeah.
Can you for those of you who are not familiar with Nardcore, can you explain what Nardcore is?
Well, I think John should probably.
Well, Nardcore, so there's punk, kind of started in the late 70s, and then in the early 80s, it turned into hardcore, which was just faster, louder. And so the kids here were like, oh, we're playing hardcore. And then someone joked and said, but we're Nardcore, just mixing up Oxnard and hardcore. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then one of their brothers was like, oh, look, let's draw a diamond with an X in it. There's the symbol. It was simple as that, and it just lasted.
Yeah.
And
And
maybe
there's-
one of those guys is a famous comic book author now.
And there's no like negative connotation with that. Like
Not
when
anymore.
people like do like gang signs.
Not anymore.
It's not like
Not anymore.
It's not like you're flashing a gang sign.
No.
It's literally an O and an X.
Maybe the early 90s, late 80s, but
Yeah.
not anymore. Now
We
it's
have
now
evolved
it's
as
pretty.
people.
It just means Oxnard.
Yeah. All right, Eric, how about you?
Well, first of all, Mystery Shop, OPAC, thank you for hosting us. Thank you all for being
Yeah.
here as we discuss this, moderating it. Oxnard is soul. It could be an actual soul. Shout out to Ox Soul, Los Solos. It could be the soul that started with Nardcore. It could be the soul that started before that with soul groups and romantica groups that were here in the 70s and 60s. And I say soul because I go back to the struggle. There were protests here on Saviors for I think like 3 days in a row, protesting ICE. And around that time, there was a show going on at a taqueria. It was artists and sea lions played. It was beautiful. There was DJs. A shout out to Samurai Eddie spinning cumbia. If you don't know, cumbia is a new punk. I play in a band called Crystal Tears. We play gothic cumbia. And what I'm getting at is like, we come from a farming community here. That's surrounded by farms. The gente is here. The soul is about. That's what Oxnard is about. Those gente, the struggle they go through. That's why we have this soul. That's why we have this music. That's why we have these artists, because of the soul of Oxnard.
And what do you play in your band?
I play saxophone. I play guitar. I play bass. I write the songs, and I sing a little bit.
Awesome. Man of many talents. Okay, and then I have some individual questions for you guys too. So these are for Eric. You've relaunched EA Records and revived both Crystal Tears and Maria. What inspired you to come back after more than a decade, and how has the Oxnard scene changed in your eyes since your earlier days?
That's a beautiful question. So I stopped playing music for 13 years. I relearned how to play guitar, how to sing. I was in a dark place. And I saw Los Solos perform at Casa Agria February 2023. And it just really inspired me to come out, because when I stopped doing the label in 2010, there was indie music, but the market was not there for soul, not yet. So God was telling me it wasn't the time yet. And then when I saw Los Solos in 2023, like he was speaking to me like, now is the time. Because now everybody knows these sacred souls, all these new soul artists. That was not around in 2010. Now that Los Solos are here, Crystal Tears, Chiqueños, there's Tranquilos, there's tons of these groups representing this soul music. And so it was time. Like, okay, let's bring the label, let's put on shows, because like John was saying, so diverse. The people want to see different types of music. They want to see people like music with heart and soul. And Oxnard has that. And so seeing Los Solos, to me, that was like, all right, it's time to come out. The community's here, the community's ready.
Shout out to Los Solos too. They actually have a cameo in our A Beat Apart campaign as well. So we're always like finding those really cool niche bands that are in town. We thought they were amazing. I think they play at Palomaso Music Festival in Heritage Square and also El Panteon, which is in November. Okay, and another one for you, Eric. What is the role of local record labels in cultivating a regional music identity like Oxnard's?
Oh yeah, I love that question. So, I see Yay as the minor leagues. I'm pretty humble when it comes to that. We're not well known, but my goal is to get these bands noticed by the rest of the world, at least within the region. So, Sea Lions, that was back in 2007, 2008. We released some singles on Yay Records, and then they signed to Slumberland Records, a bigger independent label based out of Oakland, and they toured Japan. They got bigger. My role was incubating the talent, supporting them, basically like an A&R would, and helping them develop, get signed to a bigger label. Same thing, Nick Hessler, who was in Catwalk. His recording, I think he was 14, maybe 13, when he did Catwalk. But I saw what he could become, and he went on a solo project released by Captured Tracks, a bigger independent label. Again, so the goal is to sign the local talent, develop them, get them heard, and hopefully, like, regional, nationally, they'll get recognized. So that's how I see myself.
Captured Tracks was huge, like Beach Fossils, Dive, those really cool indie bands were all on that label. Amazing. Okay, for Gregory, we'll hop over here. You've been immersed in radio, retail, and vinyl collecting. How has Oxnard's musical taste evolved over the years based on what you've seen come through the airwaves and the record bins?
Well, what I see now is, as they have mentioned, it's very, very diverse. Back in the 90s when I had the record store and I was advertising on the radio, it was primarily hip-hop, rap. That was the main, and punk and hardcore and all that. But they were technically separate. They weren't as connected as the music scene is now. And what I see now is actual bands. Back then there weren't any bands, and all of a sudden now everybody's playing instruments and some great bands. I'm really, really impressed, and I'm excited about the new music scene since I've been back in the selling records and hosting record fairs. And the music that's coming out, these bands are amazing. It's great to see great bands and great talent coming out of Oxnard. Whereas back then it was primarily a DJ scene. It was all they could do was play records and have DJ battles. And now we have actual full-on bands, which is great.
And another question for you. With the return of vinyl and analog culture, what do you think people are really craving in their music experience, especially here in Oxnard?
Well, the one thing that is part of the music experience when you listen to vinyl is actually looking at the artwork and reading the lyrics and reading the credits and all that. And that's part of the experience that people are now starting to experience. Whereas when people started learning about vinyl, it was more of just something to do. And, I want it on vinyl. So now I see Oxnard, as I'm selling records, where there's a huge community here in Oxnard, as there is in the world for vinyl. And kind of lost my thought there, but thinking about music and the experience that everybody has when listening to actual vinyl is not the same. It's a lot better when you listen to it on vinyl as opposed to listening to a CD or over the radio. So vinyl's huge.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're all familiar, but a new record pressing plant actually just opened in Oxnard a few months ago, Fidelity Record Pressing. They do represses of huge, big artists like Van Halen and some Motown artists too. So if you have a chance to check out that record pressing facility, it's really, really cool having that here. Okay, so for Jose, you've bridged performance, production, and cultural advocacy. How do you balance your role as a musician and a public arts advocate? And what changes would you love to see in Oxnard's support for the arts?
I played music professionally for maybe like the last 12, 13 years, just mainly just touring. And so recently I sort of stepped down from that, so I'm here, and I think I think in the trajectory of sort of my lifetime, this is kind of a nice transition where I'm more focused on studio stuff, on production. Also, there's something that being back home and like seeing that there's such a big need in terms of mentorship or like industry professionals. I found it's a perfect way for me to plug in, because if you like a lot of artists, they you don't know what you don't know, and so when there's not people to learn from, when like there's just that bridge of information. So for me, it's been a real joy to kind of just step in and plug in and be the person to sort of like connect people with resources. I have my studio and I've brought many bands in, and I haven't made much money because there's not a lot of money. Music is really hard, and so I think like for the amount that I've spent in studio equipment and time, I may never make my money back. That's a real possibility, but I think the joy that I get from doing it is invaluable. And I think the amount of like help, I would say the experience and the joy and the pleasure that I've had that music has given to me, like I want other people to experience that too, because it's really, really special. So I think, I would like to get out there at some point again. I think it's okay in life to take breaks and to do things. But for me, I also started this speaking series called Insight in Sound, where we bring industry professionals to come and share advice and insight on what it's like to work in the music industry. And that's been really, really cool. So we've been able to bring in like several like really established musicians. Just a couple weeks ago, we brought in Aaron Fraser from Duran Jones and Indication. So he was our guest speaker. We've had Will Dog Abers of Ozo Motley. We've had Eduardo Arenas of Chicano Batman. Lupita Infante was a guest. And these are all like free talks. So it's free for the public. And it was made with the intention of like providing information to musicians in the area who are trying to learn more. So I don't know. I love it all. I love touring. I love playing music. I love recording and producing. And I love doing this community stuff. So I got to figure out how I can do all three.
Yeah. I will definitely second that playing music is expensive, and they have a saying, how do you end up with $1 million as a musician? You start with $2 million. All right. So another question for you. Las Cafeteras brings Chicano identity into modern music. How does that ethos connect to Oxnard's musical roots?
Well, Las Cafeteras, we started Las Cafeteras like 18 years ago. And before we were a band, we were all kind of just like college activists, community organizers. And it started with like these free Son Jarocho classes that was being provided at this local community center. So people started going, and then this group of students ended up kind of playing at many different like fundraisers and local events and coffee shops, and all of a sudden we're opening up at like La Cita, which is this really cool bar there, and all of a sudden we're playing the Day of the Dead festival, and then it just kind of went from there. But I think Las Cafeteras always had like a community element because that's who we were as people. So it was the most natural thing was for that spirit to manifest itself through our art and through our music. I think like the second part of your question was, how does it connect to
your musical roots in Oxnard?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of it's a. I look at this picture from way back. This is like over 10 years ago. We were in Manhattan. We did all of this press stuff, and I couldn't believe that we were doing this. I'm this kid from Oxnard, and we were a pretty young band at that point still, but we did all these interviews and did all these TV stations, and like people out here want to know about us. It's so wild, and I look at this picture where I'm standing in the street, and I just have like this face of like, I can't believe this is happening, So I think, being that I'm just like a regular, I grew up a regular kid out here. I played sports. I went to local schools. I know there's many other young people that grew up like me that have similar interests like me. I think I was given this gift. And this gift, not that I'm the greatest musician, but that I was able to fall into this project that ended up kind of like doing a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I really want to just share like the joy that music has brought me in my life. And music is for everybody. Like you don't have to tour around the world like, that's not the only way to enjoy music. Like, all of the bands at all levels, coffee shops to just like whatever, like all of it, that's important. So I think I think it's just my joy and my duty, almost my role, to keep supporting people's musical journeys wherever they're at.
Awesome. Okay, and moving on to John, you've toured globally and still stayed anchored in the 805. What has kept you connected to Oxnard's punk and underground scene after all these years?
Well, like I said earlier, this is just home, but there's a lot of kids doing a lot of stuff now, which is really cool, that I'm not necessarily connected to because I'm almost 50. So it'd be weird if I knew 16-year-olds and I was hanging out with them, but I'm very happy they're doing stuff and they're doing their own shows and they have places like this, which is cool. And I do keep an eye on bands once they start playing, and they're doing rad stuff. But for me, I've always, I played my first show 2 blocks away from here. I went to Wainimi High School. That's where I graduated. We would always just do stuff, there wasn't many clubs for punk in the early 90s. And so we would find a spot to plug in and play, and I'm glad that kids are still doing that. They bring generators down to the beach and do their own shows. And so I'm not necessarily so connected to it as much anymore, unless my band now plays with some bands, which we do. But I still kind of, with social media, I kind of keep an eye on what's going on and be proud that there's still kids doing stuff.
Awesome. And you've seen DIY evolve from zines and flyers to digital platforms. What's been lost and gained with that transition?
Well, I learned how to make flyers by cutting and pasting at Kinko's. That is true. I think really it's the internet more than anything. I think the accessibility to music is a good thing, but it's also a curse. Because before, you would hear of a band, and you'd have to go look for the record or the CD or the cassette. Sometimes it would take you a month until you found it. You bought it, you listened to it, and you're like, I don't know if I like this, but I spent a month looking for this. I'm going to listen to it again and again, and then it became your favorite record. Now people go, oh, what's this band? Doo-doo-doo. Play 30 seconds, it sucks. Let me hear the next thing. So while it's good that you could record a song in your basement and put it out to the world that same day, it's like, I don't know. I think the thing that's lost is the hunt.
Yeah.
And you'd read, like he was saying earlier about, you look at the record, you read the lyrics, you look at the page, oh, what's that band t-shirt? I need to find that band. But you couldn't just go doo-doo-doo, and it's there in 2 seconds. So you had to go to a record store. Oh, they don't have it? Go to this other record store. And the hunt is missing. And that's the only thing I think that's missing, really.
Cool. Okay, let's go down the line with some closing remarks. But I have one more question for everyone, and then let's follow that up with our musician's favorite question: when's your next gig? So what advice would you give to young musicians or promoters trying to build something sustainable here without moving to LA or another bigger city? So let's start with Eric.
I think that's fine. That's actually the premise of Yay. I think of K Records, so instead of going to Seattle or something like that, they stuck their roots in Olympia, Washington. I've had the privilege of being in their studio and meeting him and being to K quite a few times. And anyways, the premise is we can go to LA, right? They have a scene. We can try to make it big there. But what if you start your own scene in Oxnard? What kind of legacy would that be? So my favorite label is Sarah Records, based out of the UK. And that was their kind of MO, having their roots grounded in where they're from. So Yay Records, instead of going to LA, grounded here. We used to have shows right here at the Woolworth building. It was called Fresh and Fabulous. I had to talk to the owner and convince her we can do some shows, we can bring people. And
Is it Magda or before Magda?
Oh my God, I think it was. I forgot. Was she a redhead?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
She had brunette-ish.
Yeah. It's been so long. This was in 2008, 2009, 2010. And yeah, so let's bring in our bands. And luckily we did well. We got touring bands that come through from New York, LA. Cola Boy, who used to play in Sea Lions, was playing there. And we had DJs. We tried to go into the soul and old school route. Again, the market wasn't there yet, but the market is here now, because now everywhere there's a show and there's DJs, there's vendors. The community comes out. So yeah, it's about making our own community here, and it's vibrant, it's strong, it's rich. And I go back to the gente, the farms, the struggle, the cost of living, how high it is. Is real. That's a struggle. ICE, that's a struggle. The soul we have here represents that struggle. I keep saying that because it's real. So that's why we're not going to LA, because we have our home here.
And when's your next gig?
Not focused on gigs right now, because Crystal Tears are finishing their album.
Wow.
And yeah.
Well, we look forward to the album. John, how about you? Same question.
Repeat it really quick.
What advice would you give young musicians or promoters trying to build something sustainable here without moving to LA or another big city?
I would say make physical flyers, hang out, talk to people. The only way you're going to get people to go to shows is by talking to people. And it might be uncomfortable at first, but you kind of get used to it, and flyers is a good thing that it's easy, like, hey, check it out. Hey, check it out, and fostering some sort of community, which the kids here do. It's awesome. And so, like, someone starting out, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. If you want something, like, I've always been a real believer in whatever you want, as long as you work hard enough, you'll get it. And just keep trying. If it doesn't work, try something else, and just never stop.
Cool. Any gigs coming up for you?
No.
Punk rock bowling is huge, by the way. If you guys
played,
haven't heard.
we played last Sunday, and then we're trying to finish our next record. So,
Cool.
working on 10 new songs.
Okay. That's exciting. Okay, Jose?
Well, I think the advice that I give to young musicians is really, first and foremost, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure that you enjoy what you're doing and be sincere. Don't try to be like anybody else. Don't try to be like any other. Be like yourself. Like, if you're inspired by a band, that's cool, but do your own version of it. I think in music's such a hard industry. Like, if you want to make a living as a musician, it's so challenging. We can't sell CDs anymore. People don't buy CDs. That was a really great profit margin for us touring bands. Now everything's streamed, and we work really hard to pretty much give our music away. And so I think at the very least, if you're an artist, I believe it's just very important to just be sincere as an artist and do the music that you love doing. I think beyond that, let's say you're a band that's starting to do stuff. I do think to be successful as an artist, you have to work really hard. You have to be really good. And I think you have to be lucky. I think that's a big part of it. You can't rely on the luck to happen, but at least if you're enjoying it, then that's a good journey. So that's the advice that I would give.
Amazing. And I know you're on a break with Las Cafeteras, but any dates coming up or anything else?
I just got invited to go on a short run with Los Tranquilos.
Nice.
They have a couple shows. They're a band that I recorded and produced here in Oxnard, who's doing a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, so that's in August. So that's my next gig.
Okay. And Gregory?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Sure. What advice would you give to young musicians or promoters trying to build something here in Oxnard without moving to a bigger city?
Build connections with community members, and if you're for promoters and for musicians, do it for fun. Don't think about becoming a star or trying to make $1 million and lose $1 million. Just do it for the fun of it, and have a passion for it, and that'll come out. And you'll if you are going to be successful, then it'll come out that way. Don't try to push yourself to be something you're not. And at the same time, also have a backup plan and get an education. Get an education, definitely.
And any dates coming up for you for anything?
Well, actually, and I'd like to acknowledge that I admire musicians, any musicians. I think it's amazing because I was never able to play an instrument, but that's why I buy vinyl and I listen to music. Next gig for me is actually working here at the Mystery Shop. I'm going to be opening up a space here where I'm going to be curating the music, the vinyl selection here. So actually, it's the first, which is Sunday. I was supposed to have my cabinets built, but I'm going to have some space against the wall. And little by little, I'll be bringing in all genres of music on vinyl. So that's going to be my next gig.
That's great. And then shameless self-promotion. I can't believe I'm saying this. I have a gig next week at the Whiskey A Go-Go opening for Edema, which is like a rad band. Well, it's so nice meeting all of you. To be honest, I've heard of all of you for years, so it's nice to finally like put a face with the name. And thank you for your time today and sharing your passion with everyone here. And I think it'd be awesome if we could end with a photo with everybody. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.